Hi everybody, Dr. Millie here. I'm trying something new today, and it's a live stream. This is my first time, so hopefully there won't be too many issues. Of course, this is not medical advice that I'll be giving. I'm making a massive disclaimer. This is simply general information, my thoughts about different diets that are out there and on the market right now, and hoping to maybe clarify how you can use the information that's available on the internet to your best benefit without hopping from diet to diet to diet. Because as a consumer of nutrition information myself, as well as a dispenser of nutrition information, I am aware of how much we are bombarded with nutritional information, and we can skip around from fad diet to fad diet without necessarily knowing why we are going down that rabbit hole, if you will. And we can do some damage to our metabolism if we're not careful. So I'm here to provide a balanced approach on how you can access diet information that's provided by the media without, freaking out because of the sensationalism of it, and how you can tune into your own self and figure out what you should be eating based on your metabolism as it is right now, based on what your blood type is, what your moon sign, your sun sign are. So all these things, what your genetics are, if you've had your genetics tested. So there's different reasons as to why you might be benefiting from some diets over others. And we really only have part of the picture and part of the puzzle when it comes to doing assessments, especially genetic assessments, and how we can benefit from that in an all-encompassing way. So there still is a lot of trial and error in nutrition and a lot of individuality in nutrition. We all have different food preferences. We all have different tastes. We have different access. We have different histories, different ancestries that allow us to choose one food over the other. And in many cases, the food that our ancestors were eating, if you know what your own personal ancestors were eating, and if you were raised on that food, in many cases, that is the right food for you. However, if you were raised or are an immigrant to this country or a first generation and you were raised on food that was typically it's been in your lineage to eat food from China or India or South America, and the quality, or even Italy, the quality of the food is different here in America. If you're in America right now, the quality of the food is different here. And so even though you might be eating the same recipes, because the quality of the food is so different, your body could react to it completely different. So wheat here is different than wheat in Italy, for instance, or eggs here are different than eggs in China. So this can also impact you. So I'm here to discuss all of that. I am the founder of Eating for Meaning, which is a nutrition program geared to steer you away from fad diets and more towards um, your own intuitive personality, so that you can discover for yourself how you should be eating and what you should be eating. But in the news lately, there's some fad diets that are in the news. And when I say fad diet, it doesn't mean that there's no evidence behind them. With many diets, there's some evidence, but as I mentioned, the variety between individual to individual, and how big the sample size and what the population was and what condition they were suffering from and what their diet was beforehand really makes a big difference. So what you're eating now makes a big difference as to how you will respond to a diet moving forward. So the majority of Americans are eating the standard American diet, right? So the SAD diet is made up of low fiber grain products, primarily wheat and or corn. If we're eating packaged food, then we tend to be eating genetically modified foods, the same foods over and over and over from food to food item. That would be soy, corn, canola, sugar from sugar beet, genetically modified sugar beet, and then cottonseed oil is now packing a lot of our canned fish. There's other genetically modified foods that have also hit the market, alfalfa, and so our beef, our cattle are reared on genetically modified alfalfa, and maybe some other animals as well. And then also alfalfa sprouts. If you're eating those, of course, that's not comprising the majority of your diet. Hawaiian papaya, zucchini. That you'll notice there's a lot more zucchini these days. One reason is because it's been genetically modified. And then there's just foods that are, on the dirty dozen list, or wheat, which has been genetically modified over the past decades and really heavily sprayed with pesticides. We know this because there's toxicology studies showing that glyphosate, which is the chemical from Roundup, from the pesticide Roundup, is heavily found on wheat crops. And so if you think about just our food market and the food industry, we in America and in the Western developed world, although definitely food economies are different in America versus Germany versus Italy versus India versus China. And so there's a lot of variation from country to country. I'm in America, so I'm talking mostly about American food, and American food is co-opting other nations. However, if, for instance, you're eating at KFC in Singapore, it really might be different than a KFC here in New York or in Memphis or in Houston. So, and the reason for that is because usually they're using local chickens. They're using chickens, for instance, that are reared there. And so it really, KFC actually could be much better in Singapore than it is in America, just based on the agricultural practices. But if you look at how food is being reared here, we have what you call cash crops. And so there are certain crops that really cannot fail. What if it's a bad year for oranges? What happens to orange juice and all the orange juice sales, right? What if it's a bad year for wheat? What happens to bread and all the packaged cookies and cakes and pies that most Americans have as a staple of their diet? And so because we have these cash crops, these crops that really most Americans are eating at most meals of the day, every day of their life, a lot of manipulation, whether that's genetic manipulation or just so gene variations or splicings, or pesticide use, higher pesticide use, or genetic engineering for cold weather or for bugs or for rain or for drought. So there's all these manipulations that are going on in the food economy in order to ensure that that crop is, high yielding. And so, and I'm not in the belief that GMO genetic modifications are producing higher yield crops, but they certainly are producing, there's certainly lots of politics going on with genetic modification and farmers to ensure that farmers are using GMO seeds, and certainly foods that have been heavily used with pesticides such as GMOs certainly do grow bigger. They are less nutrient dense, and you can taste the difference when you eat organic food, organic fruits and vegetables. You see how small they are in comparison to, especially the small farm organics as opposed to the corporate organics. There is a difference. Some corporate organics are quite large. If you look at corporate organic apples or blueberries, they can still be very large and quite tasteless. Whereas if you eat from smaller farms, local farms, for instance, then they might be that heirloom flavor that you remember when you were a kid. They might be smaller, like avocado. Organic avocados are a lot smaller and more flavorful. And so these are some benefits to eating organic, in addition to not having the pesticides in your diet. And so pesticides, the amount of pesticides that are being used and sprayed on our food are definitely having a big impact, especially on our on our digestive health. And that can change our genes as well, just if there's so many chemicals that are blocking life. So they're killing worms and bugs, but they're also killing good bacteria in our digestive tracts, and that can certainly change the microbiome of our digestive tract. And that's really where the majority of the immune system lives. That's where chemical messengers are, such as serotonin, that make serotonin, so that release serotonin from the digestive tract up into the brain. So it's responsible for your mood and your depression. So there's a whole lot going on in the digestive system, more than just like digesting your nutrients. So one article that has been in the news lately is B12 deficiency. And B12 deficiency is becoming quite common. Up to maybe 40% of the population are B12 deficient. And that can be because, more people are turning towards veganism, but it also might be because the integrity of our digestive tract. We need to be able to break B12 apart. We need to be able to be producing hydrochloric acid in our stomach in order to absorb B12 into our stomach. B12 is absorbed in the stomach. It's not absorbed in the intestine. And so if we're taking antacid medications, for instance, then we're less likely to be able to absorb B12. B12 is also manufactured in the large intestine. So if we've taken a lot of antibiotics, or if we don't have many foods with good bacteria in our diet, then we're less likely to be able to manufacture vitamin B12 as well. And then we could be anemic. So pernicious anemia is when your body actually is not producing enough hydrochloric acid so that it can break down that B12, so you're not absorbing the B12. And whereas nutritional deficiency is just simply that you're not getting enough B12 in your diet. Now, another thing that's happening, which is very interesting when it comes to B12, is that, and we're finding this out as we're able to test for methylation factors. So the MTHFR gene, for instance, shows whether or not you can methylate your B12. So if you can convert your B12 from cyanocobalamin, for instance, which is the delivery system, maybe in certain foods, whereas B12 is bound to, a cyanide type of chemical component, which might be natural. It's it's naturally found in soil. But you have to be able to break that down and use it so that it goes into your energy cycle, your Krebs cycle, and so that it's also being able to be used in your serotonin pathways and your neurotransmitter pathways. So we need to be able to metabolize vitamin B12 and kind of break it down into a more available component called methylcobalamin or hydroxycobalamin, which are easy to absorb. And many people are lacking the gene that can convert the cyanocobalamin to the methylcobalamin. And generally, methylation is slower and poorer as we age. And so if you're getting older, you could be having a harder time with, for instance, liver metabolism, liver detoxification, and methylation in general. Methylation is one component of phase 2 liver detoxification. It's one of the detoxification pathways. And so that might be happening because we're older. It might be happening because we're on medications, chemotherapy, or other Tylenol, other medications that are disrupting our liver's ability to methylate properly. Or it might be this epigenetic component that we've inherited from our parents, from one or two of our parents, which disrupt our ability to metabolize this vitamin B12. And therefore, it sets us up for having a higher risk factor for Alzheimer's, heart disease. And you can measure this. You can measure this in your lab work. If you can look at your methylmalonic acid, you can look at your vitamin B12 level. So if you have an optimal level of vitamin B12, a higher, a good range, so between like 400 and 900, there's not really any negative side effects of having, or drawbacks of having, high B12. But there certainly are a lot of drawbacks of having low B12. And even if you have levels within normal, but they're between 200 and 400, that also can cause health problems. So just because you have quote unquote normal levels of B12 does not mean that you have enough B12 in your diet or in your system that's being absorbed so that you can actually use it for all the enzymatic functions and chemical reactions that need to go on in your body. Because B12 is a cofactor for many, many, many chemical reactions, nutritional biochemical reactions that your body needs in order to, for instance, lower your blood pressure, help repair your nerve, give you energy, help support your blood production, red blood cell production. Also, there's a chemical or a protein called homocysteine, and homocysteine is linked to high homocysteine levels is linked to high or likelihood or risk factors for having depression, Alzheimer's disease, and heart disease. And so this is one way that we can use nutrient supplementation or even just diet in order to help reduce our risk factor for congestive heart disease or high blood pressure or even Alzheimer's. And so, for instance, if you have found that you lack the MTHFR converting gene, then, especially if you lack it and you've inherited from both sides of your family, so you're homogeneous for that, then your body really might have a hard time converting homocysteine into methionine. And so you might have so then you're not really able to make use of the B12 in your system, and this can cause problems. And so symptoms of B12 deficiency are anemia, depression, weakness in the muscles, fatigue, lack of energy, brain fog, strange sensations like pins and needles, limbs falling asleep, numbness, tingling in the hands, feet, and the legs, poor circulation, neuropathy, including diabetic neuropathy, but also just non-diabetic related neuropathies, which is not resulted from an injury. If you do have an injury, supplementing with B12 can help you with your nerve degeneration. Difficulty walking, staggering, balance problems, jaundice. Also, as I mentioned, this methylation is an aspect of liver detoxification. So if bilirubin's built up in your liver, then you're not able to clear it. That can be a symptom of B12 deficiency, and you would get the yellowing in the eyes potentially. Also hallucinations, swollen tongue, inflamed tongue. And so there's many ways to correct B12 deficiency, primarily as having animal product in your diet, or liver is the highest source, an organic or grass-fed calf liver or chicken liver. But if you are not, or red meat, once or twice a week, or even liver once a month is enough to correct potential B12 deficiencies and iron deficiencies. They tend to go hand in hand because the sources of B12 and iron are similar. And so, but if you're vegetarian, then you do want to turn towards like blackstrap molasses, which is a natural source of B12, or nutritional yeast, which is fortified with B12, which is a non-candida yeast, a protein, really a high protein food. It's got about, I think it's got about 6 grams of protein per tablespoon. Maybe it's 9. And all your dark leafy greens have some B12 in it. Avocado has some B12. Your seaweeds, anything that's dark green, black, blue, navy, purple will tend to have some B12 in it. Any fermented foods, so properly fermented foods like in the fridge section, if they have good bacteria in them, so sauerkraut, pickles, pickled beets, kimchi, apple cider vinegar, will have a little bit of B12 in them, just because of the probiotic activity. Yogurt, kimchi, miso, tempeh, some of your fermented soy products. If you make Rejuvelac, which is a fermented wheat berry drink, or you can make it out of non-gluten grains, then that can have some B12 in it. Kombucha, maybe a little bit of B12. So depending on the original substance that was used to be fermented, if it has a higher amount of B12 in itself naturally, then you'll likely get a better B12 content in the fermented food. But most fermented food should have some B12, as well as seaweed, nori, hijiki, RMA, kelp, blue-green algae, spirulina, chlorella, all will have some B12 in them. And sprouts tend to have bioavailable B vitamins, and regardless of whether they're sprouted from beans or seeds or grains or nuts. And but above and beyond, I do often recommend supplementing with B12, and really I recommend supplementing with an activated complex. So I recommend Nutrimetrics, and I'm going to include a link if you're interested. This is a powder type of B12, and so basically what you do is you pour the powder into the cap a little bit. And so you take the powder, you pour it into the cap, you put it into a glass, and then you add 2 ounces of water to 1 cup full of powder, and it kind of fizzes up, gets effervescent, and this is all activated. So the folic acid in here is activated, the vitamin B12 is activated, so they're all methylated versions, and it's got the B1, the B2, the B3, the B4, the B5 and B6, B9, folic acid, and the B12 in it. And it's really with a ratio that's meant to work with normal biochemistry. Now, if you're deficient, then you might need more than 1 capsule per day. Great if you've drank too much wine, great if you have a headache, great if you have circulation problems, great if you have numbness or pains, great for energy, just as a great regular supplement. So This is a product that I do recommend, and I do get a kickback if you order it, but also, and I highly recommend not ordering from Amazon because it should not be sold on Amazon. Amazon sellers are not allowed to sell direct marketing products like Nutrimetrics. It's a direct marketing um, business, so we tell each other about it, and then we all benefit from it. And if you're interested in learning more about that business, Nutrimetrics, or even just on Market America, because it's from Market America, then you can see the link below, because I'm doing a training on that on Sunday morning. But I veer off course. And so B12 is in the news. So I did want to talk about how to, get B12 back in your system. You can get a blood test for B12, and even if your doctor says your B12 is okay, but it's between 200 and 400, or even 200 and 500, you really don't have optimal levels of B12, especially if you're having any of those symptoms that I talked about. So you do want to figure it out, considering getting more B12 in your diet and or also supplementing with it. So I called this show the Ketogenic Diet, Intermittent Fasting, and Fasting Mimicking Diets. And so I do want to get into the material. And so ketogenic diet, and this might be a lot of material with one show, I'm not really sure, but fasting mimicking, so the ketogenic diet, I think I'll start there. So a lot of you maybe have heard of the ketogenic diet. And the ketogenic diet is a therapeutic diet, which means it does serve a purpose. It's great for anybody with neurodegenerative diseases. It can be great for people with epilepsy, kids with epilepsy, adults, because having a high-fat diet does help to repair the myelin sheath. Good for MS, good for Parkinson's, good for ALS, good for, and again, I'm not giving medical advice here. I'm just discussing the range of benefits of the diet that have been found with the ketogenic diet. And so the ketogenic diet is, being a high-fat diet and very, very low in carbs, it is an excellent diet for anybody that needs to repair brain cells. If you've been in an accident and you've got brain damage, concussion syndrome, could be a good use. People with tremors, people with uncontrollable movements. And so because having so much high fat, especially if it's good fat, it really does, I'm never a proponent of, oh yeah, you can eat anything you want and it's all the same. No, calories are all different based on their nutrient density. So absolutely, I would recommend having, fat from fishes, the fattier fishes, wild salmon if you can get it, mackerel, albacore tuna, sardines, anchovies, black cod, herring, halibut, and maybe some trout, as opposed to having like bacon fat and things like that. Now, I'm not going to say absolutely, I'm not going to, I'm a moderate. I'm a moderate, and I'm very much, different foods work for different people. However, many people with inflammatory conditions will avoid pork products. I mean, many people avoid pork products anyways for religious reasons or cultural reasons, but pork is a mixed red and white meat, similar to human meat. And so it is possible that the human body identifies pork as self and can mount an inflammatory reaction against it. So if you find that you can't eat pork or that it gives you pain, then that could be a reason for why. So so anyway, having coconut oil, avocado, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, pine nuts, so good quality hazelnuts, good quality Brazil nuts, and all the butters, and is a better way to get fat in your diet than meat and dairy. And the ketogenic diet, if it's done for a therapeutic purpose, like I've mentioned, like a neurodegenerative disease or a neurological disease, then I think that it's a really good option, because it gets people really low in carbohydrates, and really it's inflammation that's caused from eating sugar. And I do find that these people with these conditions do have intense sugar cravings. And even Alzheimer's, it's been coined diabetes 3. And the reason it's been coined diabetes 3 is because it's heavily linked to high blood sugar. And so when your blood sugar is high, This is damaging for the brain. This is damaging for the nerves. This is damaging for the myelin sheath and the dendrites and the components of our nerve cells. And um, and this is, why our body needs to clear our blood of sugar. But if we are overweight, or if we have high insulin, or if then we can be having insulin resistance, and then we might get metabolic syndrome, or our body might not be able to clear the blood sugar well, and then we're having this high blood sugar, which can also contribute to these neurodegenerative diseases. And so the key is to really get the insulin low and the blood sugar low while having a sustained intake of carbohydrate, having a sustained intake of calories. And fat does have the highest calories, and it also burns the slowest. And so for blood sugar regulation, eating a high-fat diet is actually really good, because it helps to buffer blood sugar spikes and lows, so you're not getting hyperglycemic and you're not getting hypoglycemic. And this is highly functional when we need sustained energy, but we want to block sugar spikes, or if we're sensitive to sugar or starch or carbohydrate. So, and it's not a detox diet. It doesn't leave us as hungry, let's say, as maybe eating a paleo diet, where we need to potentially eat more often. So when we eat fat, we don't need to eat as much. And so you could also get away with potentially, it's hard to go low calorie when you're eating high fat, just because fat does have 9 calories per gram, as opposed to carbs and protein only have 4 calories per gram. And so fat just is a higher calorie food any way you slice it. However, you could get away with, if you're eating nutrient dense fatty foods, including coconut, including avocado, including your fishes, including having ghee and olive oil, and maybe red palm oil or coconut oil, high nutrient foods, nuts and seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, foods which have low carbohydrate content but high fat content, and also some protein. And they also have omega-3s, so you're also getting some heart protective omega-3s, anti-inflammatory omega-3s, which can shift your prostaglandin pathways, so you're not making as much inflammatory hormone. And this is also overall good for anybody with neurodegenerative diseases. We definitely want to be lowering inflammation and lowering the impact of the immune system kicking up a reaction. And it's satiating, it's filling, fat is filling, fat is satisfying. So you don't get as many, it really does balance out sugar cravings. So the ketogenic diet recently has been started to use for weight loss. And if you notice, if we look at fads where we're cutting out entire macronutrient families, then the next fad responds to what the fad was before. Okay, so I hope you're with me. Pritikin diet was low fat. And so that was a way to quickly reduce one's risk of high blood pressure and heart disease, especially if you were having plaquing or arteriosclerosis, by eliminating fat, for 3 weeks. The problem with the Pritikin diet is it is a short-term diet. There has been no research on how long one should go low fat. And people took it as gospel because it worked so fast. It worked within 3 weeks. They thought, oh, well, if it works within 3 weeks, more is better, so we should stay on it forever. No, because the Pritikin diet is a high carb diet. It's higher carbohydrates. It should be slow carbohydrates, so it should be whole grains and vegetables and legumes and nuts and seeds and root vegetables. That's the way to do any proper therapeutic diet, is to have whole foods, which is a problem if you're looking at Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, because those diet programs don't look at quality of food. And that's a real negative when you're trying to address a health issue, not just when you're trying to lose weight, but when you're trying to address a health issue, which many people who are overweight are also trying to address a health issue. And this is because the quality of their food and their diet has been bad, not just that they've been eating too much. And so the ketogenic diet, if you're using it to lose weight, okay, let me back up. Let me go back to the Pritikin diet. So the Pritikin diet, I believe, is a short-term diet. Yes, you go low fat for 3 weeks. You eat protein and slow carbohydrates, so carbohydrates that do not spike your blood sugar. And your blood pressure goes lower. It's a very sensible diet. It's a very whole foods diet. And then you can go back to incorporating some healthy fats into your diet, because we need healthy fats. We need healthy fats to help us make good cholesterol. We need healthy fats to help make our hormones, our testosterone and our estrogen, our progesterone. Um, so especially as we're aging, if we're reducing all fat from the diet, then we're really not getting enough dietary fat, so that we can make our hormones, and that we're already suffering from low T as men or low estrogen as women. And so that's a negative. So we really have to balance out what the diet is with what other side effects it's having on the system. Okay. We also need fat to protect our brain. Our brain is primarily made of fat, and all the material making up the neurons. As I mentioned, the myelin, that's also a fatty material, and the brain and even cells have a lipid bilayer, which means that in order to bring nutrients in and out of cells, and primarily you want fat nutrients in, like, oh, you want to bring omega-3s into the cell, you want to bring vitamin E into the cell, you want to bring vitamin A, beta carotene into the cell. These are the body's natural antioxidants that help protect and promote a long cell life and protect it from cell death. And we need fat in order to bring these as a carrier substance, to bring these fat soluble vitamins into the cell, and that includes potentially vitamin D and vitamin K as well. And so if we're not having any fat, then our bodies really aren't able to absorb these fat soluble nutrients. Even if like a skim milk is fortified with vitamin A, you might not be able to absorb that vitamin A, because there's no fat that's going to help to bring it in and carry it into the cell. So it might just actually go into the toilet. So we really have to think about these things when we're choosing our diet. I mean, this is high level nutrition that I'm explaining in a common way so that you can understand it. But you can also understand that this takes a lot of consideration as to what else is going on in your body. So I tell people, if you cut beef out of your diet, what are you substituting it with? Are you substituting it with chicken 7 days a week? What are the repercussions of eating chicken 7 days a week? I believe chicken is one of the most poorly treated animals. I mean, it's foul, but animals in our agricultural economy. And we're eating all the crap that chickens eat. Like literally, they're eating their own crap. They're fed arsenic and they're fed genetically modified corn, and we're just getting all of that at the top of the food chain. So if you're not varying your diet, if you're all of a sudden going off beef and switching to chicken, and then that's all you're eating, you're going to have inflammatory problems. You are. And if you don't, then you're lucky, because your genes are helping you, or maybe what you're eating otherwise is balancing it out. So, I mean, some people can smoke and drink alcohol until they're 110 and they're totally fine. So there's always anomalies in the world. But what we're trying to do is find out what the best diet for us is. And that's the nature of this show. That's the premise of Eating for Meaning. This is my book, Eating for Meaning Workbook. This is a book that takes you through 18 self-reflective exercises so you can become more conscious with your food choices. And this is really what I feel is the most important thing when you're selecting what you're going to eat and which kind of, diet or food regimen you're going to follow, because it really should be up to you to decide which one it is. But it takes education, and it takes self-reflection, and it takes research on the part of yourself to find out which foods are responding well for you and which foods are not. And so this takes some trial and error. It might take some blood testing. It might take a visit to see me or a doctor or a nutritionist, but a lot of it has to do with your own self-exploration and kind of opening up doors to look at how food is impacting you and how you're feeling after you eat every meal. When we say food is medicine because every time you eat, you have the opportunity to do something good for yourself, to heal yourself, to replete yourself with nutrition, to give yourself energy. But if you're making the wrong choices for yourself and you're depleting yourself of nutrition, you're depleting yourself of energy, you're causing inflammation, then your food is poison. So not all food is medicine. And so there's good medicine and there's bad medicine, right? So you can look at it that way. And so you can buy my book on my website, drmillie.com, or you can buy it on Create Space, and there's a link on my website for you to buy it. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble as well. But me being a Market America distributor, I don't like to use Amazon. Really, Jeff Bezos is the wealthiest man in the world. Why would you ever want to help the wealthiest man in the world become more wealthy? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. We should be helping each other become wealthy and supporting each other, um, you know, as small individual business owners, as opposed to and helping to build up the economy this way, as opposed to helping the wealthy get wealthier. So that's my stance. This show, if I continue to do these live shows, I'm really going to become a lot more vocal about really who I am. You know, I'm a person who is not very mainstream. I appreciate mainstream. I want to become. I'm in the mainstream, and I like being there. But I'm always somebody who challenges the mainstream. So I'm in the mainstream, and I'm there challenging it and questioning it. And I am interested in things that lie outside the mainstream because I seek change and I seek a better world. And I'm not any kind of freak, and I'm not any kind of extreme eater myself. I mean, I'm a very healthy eater. I'm certainly extremely knowledgeable when it comes to nutrition and health. And I've got my degrees. I've got my naturopathic medicine license. I'm a certified nutrition specialist. I have my master's in public health. I have my undergrad degree in women's health. And so um, I just think that we get to choose and select our world and how we want it tailored. And if we're tailoring our world in the way that we want it, then we're supporting ourselves and we're helping ourselves out and we're helping each other out. And I really feel like direct marketing, for instance, which is like Market America, which is not a multi-level marketing because there's no levels of payment compensation. Everybody gets 100%. And so that's why I feel a business like that is so advantageous to so many people. Now, whether you own your own business or whether you have a job and you want to make extra money on the side, you want to earn for your retirement, it's also a willable business for the next generations. And so I am going to be talking about this a lot more because I'm so passionate about this business. I am looking for business partners. So if you feel like you would be an ideal partner for me, then definitely reach out to me and attend my Zoom meeting on Sunday morning. I'm also a person who's interested and fascinated with what's going on in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And I really do think that there's potential for new economies to be created and that the wealth shifts. And that's something that really needs to happen because the 1% is a problem. The problem with the 1%, I mean, and God bless people who have a lot of money because a lot of them are very responsible with money. But there is also a lot of corruption. And when the wealth is in the hands of the 1%, it does not get shared or distributed properly. If we had a large middle class, then that would be one thing. But the fact is that the middle class is shrinking and the wage gap is increasing. And we can't expect employers to be there. We can't expect the government to be there for us because the track record is that they haven't. And we're at this place right now because we've all followed along. And really, we really have to start thinking for ourselves and making decisions for our own well-being and thinking what's best for you and I believe in taking charge of your life in as much as possible and not just doing what's automatically expected of you. I feel like that's the best way to have a rich life. I feel like that's the best way to have a balanced life and be rewarded and to have freedom and flexibility and happiness over your life, dominion over your life is making your own decisions and making your own choices. And this comes in when it getting off the mainstream food grid, the standard American diet. This comes in getting off the, being an employee that's never going to make anywhere near as much as your boss. This comes with, thinking about new ways, new currencies that might be interesting and might be actually changing the economic structure and balancing it out in the world level. As opposed to the same countries being robbed all the time, the same people being taken advantage of all the time. And so, yeah, so if this is your philosophy or if you're interested in learning more about this, then definitely, reach out to me and continue on this ride with me because I'm here to help inform people and to be informed myself so that you can, my goal for you is that you get real with your health first and foremost, but also get real with yourself, like wake up, right? Like we're all here to kind of wake up and tune in And there's different ways to access my material. So you can purchase my book. You can follow me here on Instagram. You can follow me along at drmillie.com. I do have my own newsletter that I send out. You can get a free download to a free organ detox guide. It's a free book that talks about how our emotions are affected by our organs, and when our organs are imbalanced, how that affects our emotions. And so many people have emotional connections to the food that they're eating. And I definitely will discuss that in another show, but you can also read about that in my book or in my detox guide. I do have another the guide to detox as well, which takes you through how to actually do a detox. Um, our bodies are detoxing all the time, but with all the crap that we're eating and all the uncontrolled amounts of pesticides and chemicals in our environment, we're being suppressed. Our ability to get rid of waste products is being suppressed and so we really have to help facilitate our body to detox, because so many people are constipated. So many people are not eliminating waste. So many people are not drinking even just water and bitter foods and natural herbal diuretics. And of course, depending on how you respond to all of these foods, you really don't just take my word for it, because I'm not giving out any medical advice here. This is a discussion about how to approach your own health so that you can tune into your own body and listen to what it's saying. So okay. So I was talking about the Pritikin diet and the low fat diet, and how we started on that bandwagon. But then what ended up happening is that people were having high carb diet, high whole grains and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with some people, some maybe blood types or some signs, having higher carbohydrates in their diet. However, if you're suffering from belly fat or resistant belly fat or weight gain or back fat or shoulder fat or hip fat, if you're suffering from stress and the inability to lose weight, or if you're waking up in the middle of the night, then having a high carb diet can negatively affect you. And so if you've been eating high carbs, especially high white processed carbs, high sugar, getting your sugar fix all the time, kind of self-medicating yourself with a sugary coffee and a Danish and a donut and a sandwich for lunch and a pasta for dinner. And if your whole day tends to be kind of bread, carbs, bread, carbs, bread, carbs, and then dessert, maybe it's cake or cookies. And, if you stop to think about how much how much processed wheat and processed sugar you're getting in your diet, and even if you tried to replace it with low fat or that's why the whole low fat craze kind of bottomed out on us, because so what happens is that there's a diet that's found to be beneficial, and then marketing gets a hold of it. So food manufacturers get a hold of it, and they can market and they can say, oh, this is low fat, so this is actually healthy for your heart, right? No, we know what happened to that. And many of you might know my personal story where I cut fat out of my diet when I was 21, and I gave myself bulimia and intense sugar cravings, so much to the point where I started having food binges, and then I started purging because I was eating so much food at once, always carbohydrates, low-fat carbohydrates. And I gave myself bulimia. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I fell down the stairs and broke my jaw in 3 places, and then I forgot that I had bulimia, I was only just focused on healing myself. I mean, this really changed my life, changed the course of my life, and probably ultimately why I ended up becoming a naturopathic doctor. But it certainly gave me the experience in having sugar cravings and what happens when we cut out an entire macronutrient from our diet. And so cutting out fat is not, was found having the Atkins-based diet, basically, which is a high carbohydrate diet, but it should be a slow carb diet. But then that's always misused. And then people start thinking that wheat bread is somehow better for them than white bread. But when we say whole wheat bread, you have to start looking at the ingredients, because oftentimes in whole wheat bread, like unless you're making it, you have to look at the ingredients as to what's in there, because if they're putting bran in, a little bit of bran or a little bit of whole wheat, the majority of it tends to be white flour. So you're still getting just as much white flour and very little fiber in bread. Like if you're eating bread in order to get your fiber, in a high fiber bread only has 2 or 3 grams of fiber, and you really need, as a woman, 25 grams, as a man, 30 grams of fiber minimum per day in order to keep your cholesterol low and keep your bowels moving and keep your elimination cycles, detox cycles working well. And so the Pritikin diet, or so the Atkins diet, as great as it is, in some ways, it's been misinterpreted from food marketers, and so then people will end up thinking that they're eating, um, low carb or low sugar. Then the diet craze came in, right? So it's like, oh, we have sweeteners, aspartame, sweet and low, sugar twin, as opposed to having real sugar, actual sugar. And so, okay, yes, maybe you're reducing the amount of calories, but then they're putting more chemicals in. So then you're getting chemicals, and chemicals are obesogens. So chemicals make you fat because they block your body's ability to get rid of waste products. And also, you're keeping yourself addicted to the sweet taste. So even though you might not be getting a sugar fix or the same amount of sugar fix, you're getting all these chemicals which are still keeping your fat from eliminating or from shrinking fat cells, and also you're keeping yourself addicted to the sweet taste. So you're still keeping yourself on a roller coaster, and kind of tricking your body that you're eating sugar. So that's why diet sodas don't work, and that's why diet foods don't work for the most part. And studies show that people who drink real cola, for instance, like a real Coke or a Pepsi, actually drink less of it than people who drink diet. So people think that they have like a free pass when they're drinking diet soda, so then they end up drinking so much of it. And of course, any soda has carbonated water in it, which is bad for our bones and creates an acidic environment, and can cause bloating and inflammation. And then, not to mention all the chemicals and all the aspartame that you're getting, which is really a carcinogen. I mean, it causes cancer. And so then that was the next phase. And so then paleo was a response to that, right? So paleo was a response to a high carb diet, and paleo was deemed, like the carnivore diet, which is really not. I mean, if you're doing paleo right, you're just really having no grains, beans, root vegetables. You're really having nothing that will raise your insulin. You're only really having green and low starch vegetables and protein, but you really should be having 35% of your calories from animal protein, usually eggs, beef, lamb, chicken, etc., and 55% of your calories, or 65% of your calories, from vegetables. That's a lot of vegetables. Do you know how many cups and cups and cups of arugula you have to eat in order to maintain 65% of your calories from vegetables when you're eating a paleo diet? So most people are doing paleo wrong. And I would call paleo people lean and mean, because yes, you definitely lose weight and you stay lean on paleo, but because you're having so little sugar, sugar really makes you happy. And I'm not talking like white processed sugar. I'm talking any kind of carbohydrate value that comes from um, legumes and whole grains and fruit and nuts and seeds. It makes us happy. It raises our endorphins. It raises our oxytocin, our bonding hormone. It helps make us feel nurtured. And so if you're eliminating all the food that makes you feel that way, and you're having quite a bit of meat, meat has testosterone, and it has hormones, and it has stress hormones also. And so having too much meat in your diet really can alter your brain chemistry. I mean, I do fully believe this, and I'm sure there's a mechanism of action, but there's always kind of this colloquial uh, side note that vegetarians don't cause war, and I don't know if that's absolutely true. But I do think that vegetarians tend to be gentler people than certainly people who are eating meat. But anyway, the point is that when we're eating remnants of another species, then it does kind of block our awareness as to what we're eating on some level. I mean, I think part of this is spiritual, but I'm sure that there is some biochemistry involved in this. But I'm not going to lay it out for you right now, because it's kind of above and beyond me just talking at you. And so, yeah, basically meaning I just don't want to. And but these are things to think about, when you're thinking about your diet. These are things to think about. And I do not believe in demonizing food, especially food that has high nutrients in it. Now, because there's so many problems with agriculture and how foods are raised, and there's fast factory farming vegetables too. It's, the GMO crops, those are factory farmed. It's not only animal products that get factory farmed. However, a sad animal, I mean, if the animal is so sad their entire life, how it's very difficult for that animal to be healthy, because the animal is not just the protein in its muscles. I mean, it's also the hormones that it's produced through its lifetime. And it's you are what you eat, right? And so a chicken that's been fed um, genetically modified corn, and the chicken is yellow, and chickens are not supposed to be yellow, and they're not supposed to be big and bloated, and the food companies can get away with saying so much. They can say, oh, this has not been given hormones, because it's illegal for chickens to be given growth hormones, but they give them precursors. And so you think Purdue chickens are not given precursors to hormones? I mean, Purdue chickens are huge. They're the size of a turkey. And so you got to think about that. And anything that's given to that animal, you're eating. And so it's growth promoting, it's growth hormone promoting. And it's insulin growth promoting, And so when we're eating foods that are promoting growth, well, this is growth of our body. This is growth of our entire body mass. This is growth of tumors. This is abnormal growth. This is abnormal replication and reproduction. And so that's why these food products can be carcinogenic and cancer causing. It's as a result of how they're raised. And so certainly processed meat is the biggest culprit when it comes to cancer risk, because it has so many chemicals in it that are carcinogenic in themselves for preserving the meat and giving it a long shelf life. And that's just disgusting. Meat with a long shelf life that's been chemically treated, it's just disgusting. I mean, if you think about it like that, like who would want to eat that? Like the meat should have been rotten. And whereas traditional forms of food preservation, drying meat, pemmican and jerkies and things like that, as long as they've been done properly with bacteria and salt, but not nitrates and sulfates and other preservative stabilizers. So you really got to think, we really got to think about where our food is coming from and how it's being treated. But not just our animals, our seeds too. Like, they're being soaked in fungicide. And so anyway, it all makes an impact. So anyway, paleo, right? People were not necessarily happy with paleo. Maybe too much meat. It doesn't make sense for a vegetarian. They can't quite go there. And so keto was kind of like the next generation, right? So keto kind of comes back and opposes Pritikin. So now we're high fat. It's been shown that saturated fat is not correlated to heart disease anymore. What's really correlated to heart disease is inflammation. It's really like if there's bad cholesterol circulating through your body and it gets damaged with free radicals, and you don't have enough nutrients to fix it. And so what happens is that the plaque starts to adhere to the lining of your artery wall. And then if there's calcium floating by, then the calcium can stick onto it and harden. And so it's kind of like a scar being formed on the inside of your artery, but there's fat involved in it, and there's calcium deposits. And this is what causes hardening of the arteries. And this is what causes high blood pressure and heart disease, and so that people need quadruple bypasses and triple bypasses. And so it's a result of a low nutrient diet, so not having enough antioxidants in the diet, not enough fruits and vegetables. And excuse me, my nose is so itchy. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my guides. And so not as a result of not having enough nutrients, not having good fats in the diet to help soften that and to help increase the HDL so that the HDL can be functional against the LDL, the bad cholesterol, and not having enough fat-soluble nutrients, vitamin E, vitamin A, to help to thin the blood and keep the coagulation thing under control. And so then people have to get put on artificial blood thinners, and then they get told that they can't eat greens, and this is just people who are on Coumadin and have hardening of the arteries and can't eat green vegetables. I mean, it's just iatrogenesis. It's just mass murder being committed on the part of medicine. It's just absolutely dangerous. And there's just so many ways out of this nutritionally. So it might not be as fast, but it works, Oh my gosh, I don't know what's wrong with my nose. I'm so sorry. And so anyway, I must be having a good time. And so the Pritikin diet. So now that saturated fat has been shown to not cause heart disease, because it's not the saturated fat that causes it. In fact, we need saturated fat. And as long as we have good probiotics in our digestive tract, we can actually use the saturated fat for fuel. We can use it for repair of the gut lining. It breaks into palmitic acid and butyric acid. It repairs lesions and leaks in the intestine, if you will, and creates that gut integrity again. So it's useful. It doesn't just like go directly to our arteries and sit there like a fortress. And so then the keto has been introduced as a way to lose weight. And so if you induce ketosis, the principle behind the ketogenic diet is that you remove carbohydrates, all carbohydrates. You eat a very high fat, which is a slow burning fuel diet, and you induce ketosis. And ketosis is the process whereby your kidney produces ketones, and you can enter yourself into this state, and in this state you are burning fat at a high level, at a high rate, a rapid rate. My problem with it is that inducing ketosis can be a danger because it's putting a stress on your kidneys. And so it's, having too much protein in your diet can also put stress on your kidneys. And the ketogenic diet also might be high protein because it really is recommending that people eat high dairy and high fat dairy and high meat and bacon and lard and beef and hamburgers and double bacon hamburger, cheeseburger, no bun, right? So it really is not only necessarily a high fat diet, but also potentially a high protein diet. And if people are not having balance and not having fruits and vegetables in the diet, then I think in the long run the ketogenic diet is not a good diet. I mean, it's just not a balanced diet. I worry about the long-term consequences of being in ketosis, even if it does cause fat loss. So maybe for a short term, to change your metabolism, maybe like 3 weeks to 3 months kind of thing. Listen, if you're eating high bread, high sugar in everything, and all of a sudden you switch that over, you will lose weight. If you are suffering as a result of high insulin growth factor, high blood sugar, and that's causing your body to hold on to resistant fat, then resistant belly fat, then you will lose weight if you make a change, almost any change. And so people likely will lose weight the first 3 weeks to 3 months that they're on this ketogenic diet, but will it work sustained over the long time without consequences on the internal organs? I don't think so. And depending on what you're eating, when you're eating the ketogenic diet, it's like you better be eating a lot of full vegetable fats, as far as I'm concerned, like a lot of coconut meat, a lot of avocado, and not processed oils, because those can oxidate. And then cause that same oxidative damage in your arteries and cause inflammation in your system. So like whole nuts and seeds, organic nuts and seeds, or nut butters made out of those, not just the oils, but not just, bacon and processed meat and fatty meats, bologna or lunch meats, no, that will not, even if that results in weight loss, that will not result in health. And you can be 20 pounds less and still have high blood pressure if you're eating the wrong foods, like if you're eating foods that are too high in salt and not high enough in potassium and magnesium. And that's what's always missed when we're thinking about a low salt diet, is it's not only a low sodium diet that we're considering, it's a high potassium and magnesium diet that we need in order to naturally bring the blood pressure down. So you really have to think about what the sum of the parts is, not only the result is, okay, it's going to make me lose weight, but also, okay, what's this going to do to my body? And I don't think I'm going to talk about intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets as much as I could segue into it, because, again, it's all about making a change so that your metabolism responds. It's like making a drastic change. So whatever you're doing is not working for you. You have too much insulin in your blood. It's keeping you from getting your blood sugar low enough. And so by cutting out all the carbs, by cutting out any food or most calories for a period of time, then you're going to get this low reduction in insulin, this reduction in blood sugar, this reduction in insulin growth factor, and you're going to be able to reset your gene activation, and you're going to be able to reset your longevity factors, and you're going to be able to reset the hormones that are keeping you in that resistant fat cycle. And so I'll just say that the reason that fasting mimicking works and intermittent fasting works, and again, these are very well researched, and there's lots of choice as to how one goes about and does it. And so I think on another show, I will just touch, I'll go into it more. But anytime you're making a drastic change in your diet, you likely will get a swing in your metabolism. Now, whether or not that lasts and is sustainable for you, don't know. It depends on how your body is geared and whether or not that's the right diet for you, and depends on how nutrient rich, diverse your diet is. Because ultimately, even therapeutic fasters or people who are on extremely restricted caloric diets, but they're doing so in a healthy way, meaning they're eating the lowest calorie foods, but the foods with the highest nutrients. They're not eating a special K bar or a high fiber cereal bar and, oh, that's 100 calories. Like, how are you going to get full on that? They're eating like a huge bowl of leaves with pomegranates and chia seeds and flax seeds. And so maybe that's 100 calories is a massive bowl of salad with some lemon on it. And of course, you always want to eat some fat with your greens, because otherwise you're not going to absorb the fat soluble nutrients. You're not going to absorb the beta carotene and the vitamin A and the vitamin D and the vitamin K, whatever's there, and the lutein and the lycopene and all the other little antioxidants that are fat soluble, and so, or partially fat soluble. And the phospholipids and the fatty B vitamins like the inositol and the thionine, the lipotrophic factors. And so there's a purpose to having some fat with our salad, and maybe that's tahini, ground sesame butter, or maybe it's just having some pecans or some walnuts for your salad. But anyway, or some olive oil. I think that's the best way. Or maybe it's a little cheese. So anyway, but people who are doing calorie restriction properly are eating large amounts of food, and they might essentially kind of be eating all day or for the entire duration of their 8 hours, their feeding period, or eating, 5 or 6 meals within that period of time. They're not like eating a little bit of food. There is one version of the intermittent fasting diet where people are eating one meal a day and then kind of fasting for 22 hours. Eating one meal a day. Personally, that again might work in the short term, but I think that that's a way to mess up your metabolism in the long run. And even if they're eating at night and kind of like feeding on this nocturnal feeding cycle. So maybe, but I don't think that that's a good way to be a healthy and happy person. And so we do also want to consider how healthy and happy we are, and how, can you socialize, and can you invite friends over for dinner, and can you be part of the group, be part of the, mainstream, or, be part of, can you eat at work? Like, can you participate in these social events? Because food is love and food is joy. And so we have to be able to enjoy our food. And there's ways to enjoy healthy food. I mean, healthy food is delicious. And so as soon as you make that transition into healthy food and you realize how many flavors and herbs and spices and how satisfying it is to eat healthy, and how good you feel in your body when you're eating the right foods for you, and you're eliminating bloating and mood fluctuations and sugar spikes and hypoglycemia, food drops, and nighttime waking, and all these things just go away when you're eating the right diet for you. And so you don't even have to think about it, and your pants just fall off, right? Like, that's a secondary effect. And so I do help people using transition lifestyles, TLS, to help them lose weight and to help them do low glycemic eating, which is low sugar eating. But there's different ways that we can do it, So again, and of course I work with elimination diets with my patients, and I think elimination diets are absolutely essential to figuring out, what foods are bugging you. And so that we can remove them for a period of time, so that you can get your body back to hopefully digesting it again. Or if it's just not the right food for you, unfortunately, it's just not, and it might have to go, and you might have to find a yummy substitution for it. But I hope this has been informative. I hope that it's been informative on the ketogenic diet, what it is, and kind of how to do it, and given you an introduction on intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets. Fasting mimicking diets means keeping your calories intake very low. So it's about 400 calories. If you're eating about 400 calories in a day, then you're kind of mimicking what a fast would be, which is a 0 calorie. And not everybody can do a fasting diet. And but they say also men can eat under 600 calories and women can eat under 500 calories. And so if you're doing it right, then you're maximizing how much food you're eating within those calories. You're not just eating a Big Mac and then there's your 500 calories. You want to eat more food. And so you want to eat low calorie, high nutrient dense foods so that you also have the nutrition to repair your cells, not just about crashing your hormones and resetting your genes, although that is the purpose of doing it. So we're talking about when you're doing the intermittent fasting or the fasting mimicking diet, we're talking about a way to not only shift your metabolism, but a way to crash the hormones that are giving you chronic disease or setting you up for chronic disease, and resetting the baseline on that. And so people are using it for weight loss, but more so they're using it for chronic disease prevention and reversal. Happy to consult more on that. Please do check out my links below if you want to get some training on Market America and what that business presentation looks like and what the compensation plan is. I'm going to be talking about that on Sunday morning. In fact, I'm going to be talking about that every Sunday morning until we go to Miami. We go to Miami for International Convention, World Conference, the last week of January. And so if you want to be on my team, if you want to come and kind of assess the business or check it out, I would love to have you. Just let me know where you are. People from all over the world come. $200 a ticket. I can get you a ticket. I can send you a link for that, depending on where you are in the world. And so if you are a person with a lot of integrity, if you are a person who wants to be part of a team, if you're a person who's looking for a different way to earn money for themselves, if you're looking for a person who's invested in their health and or wants to help other people help themselves, whether it's with nutrition or weight loss or financial freedom or debt reduction or selling websites, there's different ways, or even it's just you want to do a home shopping business, there's different ways to get involved with Market America. So definitely check out my my Zoom meeting on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Please do go to my website, drmillie.com, check out my free organ detox book. You'll be on my newsletter. I send out, if I'm involved in summits, you can take a look at my events that are going on right now. I'm involved in some summits. I'm teaching a nutrition class in January before we go to Miami, a 4-week class. It includes some supplements as well as 4 weeks of nutrition instruction. We're going to be doing it in Dumbo, near Brooklyn Heights, here in Brooklyn, New York. And so if you're able to do that, it's going to be on Fridays at lunchtime. So I hope you can join me for that. You can sign up on my website. There's a link in the book now section. You can pay for that. I am available for one-on-one consultations. My fees are, not too cheap, and so, but you can get there's different ways that you can reach me and work with me depending on what your budget and what your interest level is. And so to be trained by me with Market America, there's no price for that. That's just you setting up your business and joining an amazing team. So I hope you've benefited from this. This has been my pleasure, and we'll chat soon.